and welcome to the Big Seven Stories on Wells Television. I am Bolanle Oduekun-Ayoola, and it's another time for us to talk about the Big Seven Stories that made the rounds over the past week. Every week on this show, we count down the 7 stories that everyone has been talking about, from the news that shakes the nation to the events that are shaping our world. Just know that if it made the headlines over the past week, then it's right here on the Big 7 Stories. Let's get into the Big 7 for this week. Our top story this week comes from Kano State, a rather grim story where the shocking murder of a mother and her 6 children has drawn swift action from security forces and strong reactions from national leaders. Now, operatives of the Kano State Police Command have arrested 3 suspects who are believed to be responsible for the killing of a woman, Fatima Abubakar, and her 6 children in the Dorayi Chiranchi quarters of Kano Metropolis. Now, the suspects were apprehended in an intelligence-led operation less than 24 hours after the killings were reported. Now, among those arrested are 23-year-old Umar Awalu, identified as the alleged ringleader, and surprisingly, a nephew of the deceased woman's husband, alongside Ishaku Yakubu, aged 40 years, and Yakubu Abdulaziz, aged 21 years. Now, police have said that evidence recovered from the investigation are linking these 3 men to the crime. Additionally, the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has commended the Nigeria Police Force for its rapid arrest of the suspects. The chairman of the Senate Committee on Police Affairs, Senator Ahmad Abdulhamid Malam Madori, described the operation as a sign of a more responsive, intelligence-driven and accountable police institution. He also expressed deep sorrow over the loss of life, stressing the Senate's commitment to supporting reforms that prioritize professionalism, accountability, and the welfare of police officers. Also, in a statement from the State House, President Bola Tinubu condemned the killings as barbaric and expressed deep grief over the tragic loss of life. He went on to commend the police for their swift action and called for a thorough investigation and diligent prosecution of those who are responsible for this incident. He also mourned the passing of Kano business leader Alhaji Baturi Abdulaziz, expressing and extending condolences to his families and the people of Kano State. Local authorities in Kano State have likewise condemned these murders as senseless and heartbreaking. They have urged the law enforcement to ensure that all who are really involved are brought to justice. And community leaders have, of course, welcomed these arrests, but they are calling for a transparent and swift trial. Yes, the security officials have told us that investigations are ongoing and they are working with relevant agencies to ensure that the suspects are prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Let's move on to our second story for today in the world of elections. Now, Nigeria's electoral umpire, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, this week issued a stern warning to the public about misinformation circulating online regarding the 2027 general election timetable. Now, INEC cautioned Nigerians to disregard a purported 2027 election timetable that has been widely shared on social media and other platforms, especially Facebook. Now, INEC emphasized that it has not released any official schedule or dates for the 2027 general election. In the official statement, INEC further described the documents circulating online as inauthentic and fabricated, and they have warned that that document should be ignored in its entirety. They stressed that the details in that fake timetable, the details including supposed election dates, campaign periods, party primary windows, and so on and so forth. INEC said that these details are fake and do not represent its plans or position, and it did not come from any official INEC source. And so INEC urged Nigerians, political parties, and civil society organizations, as well as other stakeholders, to rely solely on verified updates that are issued through INEC's official communications channels, including their website and their verified social media accounts, for accurate information about the 2027 elections. Now, INEC also reiterated that it operates within the framework of the Constitution and the Electoral Act. which outlines the appropriate timelines and legal requirements for publishing notices of elections and timetables. And so they say any schedule published outside of those boundaries did not originate from INEC. Anticipation is, of course, building across the country ahead of the 2027 polls, and this warning is coming ahead of that. Okay, Nigerians are being cautioned to be vigilant against misinformation that could distort public understanding of the electoral process. Meanwhile, the continuous voter registration is ongoing across several states in Nigeria. I hope that you've gotten yourself registered. If you don't have your PVC already, that's your permanent voter card. If you don't have it, please partake in the continuous voter registration so that you can exercise your franchise come 2027. Let's move on to our next story. This is also rather sad because in our third story this week, religious and civil society groups have criticized security agencies over the handling of mass abductions of worshippers in Kaduna State. And this has raised questions about communication and rescue effort. Let me tell you what happened. Now, the Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, faulted the public communication strategy of the Nigerian police regarding the recent abduction of dozens of worshippers in Kuruminwali community in Kajuru local government area of Kaduna State. So apparently some worshippers had been about 177 of them, or 176, the numbers are still not very consistent, had been kidnapped on Sunday from one Ekwa church and two Cherubim and Seraphim churches in Kuruminwali, Kajuru local government area of the state. Now, CAN did raise the alarm, and initially the Kaduna police, the CP of the Kaduna police had told newsmen and the public alike that nothing like that happened, and even went further to say that people can visit the place to verify. But CAN insisted that they knew what they were talking about. After this 177 people were kidnapped, about 10 of them who were too elderly were let off, were allowed to go, and that about 167 people, were kidnapped. And CAN went on media to talk about it, and then the police then responded that, oh yes, it's true. And the reason for their initial response was that the story was not very clear. They still had some findings to do, and that's why they responded that way. But CAN has said that the careless handling of information and the initial denials by security authorities have deepened public anxiety and undermined trust at a critical moment. CAN has also called for the immediate and unconditional release of these kidnapped worshippers, urging that all possible resources be deployed to secure their safe return. CAN said that these attacks, which took place at 3 churches during worship, have left families and communities in distress. Same thing the local residents and community leaders are saying. And we've learned that these kidnappers have requested for motorcycles, to be given to them before they even start any form of negotiation on the matter. It's a really sad one, and it has drawn condemnation and calls to intensify on the rescue efforts. Calls from places like the Southern and Middle Belt Leaders Forum, also the House of Representatives Speaker, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, who has condemned these attacks and called on security agencies to free the victims. The security agencies are, of course, emphasizing that they have ongoing operations. The DHQ said that the Nigerian military is working closely with other security forces to ensure that, these people are released. But the abductions themselves and the debate over the initial response of the security forces are reigniting discussions about Nigeria's broader security challenges, particularly in remote areas where armed groups still continue to carry out violent incursions. Moving on to our fourth story for this week. The first electricity grid shutdown in Nigeria happened on Saturday at about 2 p.m. Nigeria's electricity grid suffered another collapse, with the generations level dropping sharply and sparking concerns across the power sector. There was a complete shutdown of the electricity transmission network, and millions of consumers were again left without power. This collapse occurred amidst declining power generation, which fell to as low as 20 megawatts at certain points. And according to industry reports, they say power generation has been struggling throughout the week, at times hovering around 24 megawatts, which is far below the minimum level that is needed to maintain the grid's integrity. And that persistent low generation was cited by NISO as a key factor in the system's inability to stay synchronized, which ultimately led to the collapse. Now, this disruption, as I'm sure that you can imagine, affected multiple regions and left distribution companies and end users grappling with sudden outages. Engineers and technical staff worked throughout the night to stabilize the system and restore supply to parts of the grid once the initial synchronization was achieved. The Nigeria Systems Operator, that's the NISO, that's the body responsible for managing and operating the national grid, issued a statement today acknowledging the collapse and attributing it to the sustained low levels of generation and technical challenges within the network. But they assured stakeholders that efforts are underway to address the underlying issues and prevent further disruptions. So if you found out that from around 12 to about evening time yesterday, that's Friday, you lost power supply, it was because the grid did go off. However, the people in charge worked very hard to bring it back, and people started having power supply around evening. But as authorities are working to stabilize the system, millions of Nigerians as well as businesses are left hoping for more reliable power and long-term solutions to these persistent grid failures. Moving on to our fifth story for this week, tensions have risen in Ogun State over the selection process for the new Awujale of Ijebuland, with security agencies and the state government moving to clarify and regulate the unfolding situation. Now, the Department of State Services over the week invited several nominees for the position of the Awujale of Ijebuland for profiling and security assessment, according to their official communications. They said the screening is part of the constitutional responsibility to ensure that individuals under consideration for these traditional leadership positions are properly vetted for security and public safety purposes. But this particular invitation from the DSS is coming amidst renewed controversy over the selection process, which has again been halted by the Ogun State government. The Ogun State government said it suspended the process to allow for compliance with legal and procedural requirements, including ensuring that all stakeholders are properly represented and the selection adheres to established traditions and state laws. They said the halt was necessary to avoid actions that could jeopardize peace and order in the region, and so on and so forth. But this latest pause or suspension or halt in this process is also following some earlier disruptions. This is not the first time. There have been earlier disruptions from the government. And there have also been disagreements among stakeholders, about how the candidates were nominated and screened. Some groups have expressed concern about the fact that the government or the state governor or government may be meddling in the selection process. We'll see how it goes. Stakeholders across Ogun State, I'm sure, are watching very closely. They're hoping that continued dialogue and careful oversight will lead to a peaceful and respected succession for the Awujale stool. And this takes us to our next story, a shocking one at that. On our sixth story this week, health authorities in Guinea-Bissau have suspended a controversial US-backed hepatitis B vaccine study on newborns, citing concerns over ethical review and approval processes. Now, Guinea-Bissau's Minister of Public Health, Kinhin Nantote, announced that the planned vaccine study, which is funded with US support, is suspended, pending a technical and ethical review by the country's national health institutions. They said a 6-member ethics committee that was supposed to meet before the study was approved did not meet, and this has raised serious procedural questions. This trial is designed as a randomized controlled study. Now, it would have involved giving the hepatitis B vaccine at birth to some infants and delaying it for others until 6 weeks of age. Then tracking the health outcomes, including illnesses, mortality, which is death, and development of the children as well. But many critics have argued that withholding this vaccine, which is already being given to children anyway, to protect them in a country that has a high prevalence of hepatitis B, raises ethical concerns. Now, the Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention, that's the Africa CDC, supports the ethical review, emphasized the importance of ensuring that research conducted on the continent meets local public health priorities and also safeguards the welfare of participants. The director of the Africa CDC, General Jean Kaseya, stated and reiterated that local authorities must have the final say over research approval processes. But surprisingly, US health officials have a different perspective because they're stating and insisting that the study is still going to proceed and that the partners are working to finalize the research protocols. Many health experts as well as ethical watchdogs have weighed into this matter. Some are saying that this situation is showing the broader tensions in global health research, especially the need for clear ethical frameworks and strong local oversight. The suspension of this study shows the ongoing debates over ethical oversight in clinical research, as well as the role of national institutions in safeguarding public health. And our last story on the Big Seven Stories for today takes us to Davos, Switzerland, where global leaders and business executives wrapped up the 56th annual meeting of the World Economic Forum, where they discussed major economic, technological, and geopolitical issues that are shaping the year ahead. It brought together, that's the 2026 World Economic Forum, it brought together nearly 3,000 participants from across the globe, heads of states, senior government officials, business leaders, and civil society representatives. Our own Vice President was also there, Vice President Kashim Shettima. And this event had the theme, A Spirit of Dialogue, where delegates focus on shared challenges in peace, security, technology, and of course economic growth, as well as climate resilience. Now, one of the most widely reported outcomes of the summit was a renewed emphasis on geopolitical tensions, of course particularly surrounding the United States and its European partners. There were discussions about how disputes over territorial sovereignty and trade policies affected nations, as well as debates around Greenland status. Yes, there was also the concern for that. Artificial intelligence also dominated the conversations at Davos. On economic policy and trade, participants acknowledged ongoing concerns about tariffs and protectionist trends. But let me give you an insight into the statements by different world leaders and global figures at the World Economic Forum that held at Davos just a couple of days ago. Now, starting of course from the President of the United States, Donald Trump, he addressed trade, AI, and global issues. During his speech, he also spoke about the US's proposed acquisition of Greenland, where he said he would not use force to attain Greenland, despite the tensions that are currently on ground and the negotiations that are involving the region as well, but still stating that the United States of America will acquire Greenland. He also framed the US as a global leader in artificial intelligence, positioning AI leadership as part of America's economic and technological strategy. We also had the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, who delivered a key address warning that the old world order is not coming back and arguing that middle powers must unite to address geopolitical rivalry and instability. He said the post-Cold War rules-based order has experienced a rupture and that Canada and similar countries must act pragmatically in the new environment. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, stressed that Europe remains open to the world, especially in trade and security partnerships. She also said that Europe must adapt to a new security architecture in response to global pressure. We also had the head of government in Morocco, Aziz Akanuch, the head of government in Morocco, who spoke about Morocco's strategic economic position between Europe, the Atlantic, and Africa. We also had the president of Egypt, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who urged greater international cooperation to harness opportunities amidst global challenges. We also had some other leaders who spoke at the forum. I'll just give us, our very own Nigerian. We had Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Director General World Trade Organization, and she stated that around 72% of global trade still functions under WTO rules, but she acknowledged that the world has changed significantly and trade dynamics are evolving. Our Vice President, Kashim Shettima, also during that period opened the Nigeria House in Davos. And that's how the week looked. 7 big stories and 1 clear picture. Thank you so much for watching the Big 7 Stories on Wells Television this week. I am Bolanle Oduekun-Ayoola. I want you to remember that the news doesn't end when the bulletin does, so stay curious, stay informed. I'll see you next week with another Big 7. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell. Bye-bye.